Good evening, good evening, good evening. How's everybody doing this evening? This is Doc Ock at noon and 9. So we're way past noon. Therefore, you know what time it must be. It's got to be 9, and I'm feeling really fine. Just dealing with the real over here, bringing you some of the good news. So let's see what we got for tonight. Proverb for tonight is: dirt show the quickest. Dirt show the quickest on the cleanest cotton. Dirt show the quickest on the cleanest cotton. And you know, by the fact that we're talking about cotton, this must be a plantation proverb. Okay, another plantation proverb for you. Oh, look what I forgot. There we go. Knew I forgot something tonight. All right, so dirt show the quickest on the cleanest cotton. Plantation proverb. So we got an extra tonight, and our extra tonight is about none other than Garrett Morgan. That's right, the one, the only Garrett Morgan. Now, right here at Kent State, I went to school with a young man by the name of Adam Morgan. And yes, it's true. Adam is related to Mr. Morgan. And Mr. Morgan, Garrett Morgan, was an inventor, black man from right here in the great state of Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio. And he invented some things that people are using today in a particular kind of way. So let's see. What did Garrett Morgan from Cleveland, Ohio invent? First of all, Garrett Morgan was born in the year 1875. He lived all the way to 1963. And his two greatest inventions, were the gas mask and the automatic stop sign. Those were his two greatest inventions. So, a tunnel explosion 200 feet below the surface of Lake Erie trapped several workers. Wearing his invention, Garrett Morgan, his brother, and two other volunteers entered the smoke and gas-filled tunnel and saved many of the men. Now, during World War I, poison gas was used by the enemy, chlorine gas, as well as some other gases. But Morgan's invention saved thousands of lives. Okay, so you can see a picture here. There's a drawing of Garrett Morgan, Mr. Morgan, and you see some of the men over here wearing his invention in World War I. Now, the second invention was the automatic stop sign. Now, the original one that he made in 1923 actually had three parts. So it said stop here in the middle, and then it had these two parts that came out like this from the side. So when you were supposed to stop, when your side was supposed to stop, those two sides would go up like this. Okay, I believe that's how that worked. Yeah, those two sides would go up like that. But then when you were supposed to go, okay. So when these two parts went down, I think that's when you would stop. When those two parts were up, then that's when you would go. So it was very simple. Either stop or go. Okay. And he sold that his automatic stop sign to General Electric Company for a very large sum of money. And then the city of Cleveland awarded Garrett A. Morgan a gold medal for his contributions to public safety. See, but Garrett Morgan was one of the first black people in Cleveland to have a motorized vehicle. Everybody else was still riding around in horses and carriages, but Garrett Morgan had a motorized vehicle. And so as he was driving around, he noticed that the cars were having a lot of accidents at the intersections because nobody knew who was supposed to go first. People just tried to zip right on through. You got the horses and the buggies, and it was very confusing. And so that's why he came up with the idea of an automatic stop sign. Okay, automatic traffic signal. All right, now we're going to move on with our featured artist and story of the evening, which comes from the mind of Jackie Torrance. And actually, Jackie Torrance is a historic, she's a national treasure, much like Miss Lou in whose stories we read earlier, the Anansi stories from Jamaica. Jackie Torrance is almost very similar to the Miss Lou of the United States. She even reminds me of her because you can see right there, Jackie Torrance was a big woman, very large, as a matter of fact, but really nice person. You couldn't meet a nicer person. So the book is called The Importance of Pot Liquor. And I'm going to read the short introduction here. And then I'm going to read a story. Okay, so we'll do a little fable here. So here we go. The importance of pot liquor. This story of pot liquor has its beginnings in slavery. Now, the whole system of slavery was arranged this way. The strong women and men were made to work the fields. And the women were also used to produce big, strong babies for sale and trade. There were also yard slaves and kitchen slaves. The cook was usually a slave who had been on the plantation a long while and was entrusted with the management of the kitchen, the house, and the house slaves. The working plantation was often the site for large gatherings. The master and his wife were entertainers. They entertained the neighbors from nearby plantations and, of course, relatives, visiting friends, merchants, and tradesmen. Because back in the day, tradesmen would go from town to town. Maybe they might have a knife business or they might have something else. And they would actually have a cart. And they would just go from place to place. Of course, you also had the snake oil salesman, too. After a feast was held, there was much cleaning to be done. Pots, pans, and dishes had to be washed and put away. What food remained was used to feed the slaves. Now, we call that leftovers. The big pot that had been used to cook turnips, mustards, or collard greens had gallons of leftover seasoned liquid. This was called pot liquor. Now, this pot liquor was not thrown away, but simply added to other pot liquor from meat and beans. Once it was heated, cornmeal or flour was dropped into the boiling mixture. When the meal or flour was done, it would rise to the top and float. Some called it corn pone dumplings. Pot liquor dumplings were served to the field slaves, the yard slaves, and the children in the cabins. It was eaten with a spoon, sipped from a bowl, or drunk from a cup. Pot liquor was at one time a southern staple. As the mustard greens, turnip greens, collard greens, and meat were cooking, the nutrients seeped into the liquid. When eaten by the slaves, the pot liquor strengthened the slave's body. This was by no means deliberate. It just happened. But the value did not go unnoticed. Some of the black mammies probably used the cure of pot liquor on their white children that they had to take care of. My grandmother's theory was that if a child who had chicken pox ate meat, the meat would set the pox on the skin. Pot liquor was the answer. The strength and endurance the slaves displayed as they toiled under oppression was remarkable. Pot liquor became an important ingredient in their diet. It is said to have been given to the slaves as a healing potion, and they used it to cure chicken pox, measles, and the mumps. A cup of hot mustard green pot liquor would aid in cooling a high fever. Pot liquor also helped the common cold, and on a chilly day, a cup of pot liquor from greens or meat could warm the very center of one's being. My grandmother was a firm believer in the power of pot liquor, and so am I. It's like the Jewish mother's faith in chicken soup. And what is chicken soup other than plain old chicken pot liquor? Sometimes I think about the ingredients that came together to make me who I am today. They weren't big or rare mixtures of complex variety, but simple, homegrown compounds. I've not been too unhappy with the product, just confused sometimes about its purpose. Upon close examination of the product, me, I find I developed like the pot liquor, a mixture of heritage and birthrights, difficulties and good fortune, a little of this and mostly whatever is my combination. My attempts to explain portions of myself as a small child are placed before you on these pages. You will read that I suffered from a speech impediment in my early years. By the time you meet my family in these pages, you will understand where I got the strength, the pot liquor, to overcome this and eventually become all things a professional storyteller. Today, I live in central North Carolina, a stone's throw from my grandparents' house at Second Creek, where I spent most of my childhood in the late 1940s and 50s. Although I spend most of my time touring the country, this place travels with me, shaping the stories I tell and giving me the reasons for sharing them. Some of the ingredients in these pages are anecdotes from my childhood. Others are the stories told in my family that have nourished me in good times and bad. They may not be big or monumental, just little things of seemingly small significance, but these stories, tales, and anecdotes were pot liquor to my life. Now we're going to skip over the next chapter here, and we're going to go to this one. This is one of my favorite stories from this book. I got a chance to meet, my family and I got a chance to meet Jackie Torrance when she came to the Seattle Center back in the 90s. She came to the Seattle Center when we were living in Seattle. And my children really enjoyed her stories. And this one was one of our favorite ones. Brer Rabbit builds a home. Not a house, but an actual home. Let me just click that. Okay. Oops. One more time. There we go. Okay. My grandma and I were walkers. We walked to my grandpa and I were walkers. We walked to his garden every day. We walked up the hill to see his brother, Uncle Fred. We walked to his sister, Aunt Sally's house, and down the road to see Aunt Mag, his sister-in-law. Pa would sometimes wait until Grandma had me busy somewhere else, or I was down for a nap before he would leave. I never understood that. Maybe he didn't want my company all the time. I don't know. But when I discovered he had left without me, there was just no living with me until he returned. Early morning walks were the best. The road was shaded by the trees, the sun was not yet beaming down on us, and the day was quiet and still. The birds and other animals in the woods were still running about. Deer, chipmunks, foxes, raccoons, possums, rats, squirrels, rabbits, especially rabbits. They were always with us on the road. When we'd spot one running ahead of us or behind us or right beside us, Pa would say, Brer Rabbit was going about his daily business. I remember asking Pa if Brer Rabbit had a house to live in like me and him. In reply, he related the story of how Brer Rabbit built a home. All the creatures in the big wood, Brer Possum, Brer Bear, Brer Coon, Brer Wolf, and Brer Rabbit, decided they should go in together and build themselves a house. They took different jobs. Brer Rabbit insisted that he'd have to do something on the ground because he couldn't climb ladders, which made him dizzy in the head. And he couldn't work outside because the sun made him shiver. And he couldn't, so he got himself a ruler and stuck a pencil behind his ear and started measuring and marking and measuring. He was in and out all around, so busy that the other creatures really thought he was putting down a whole parcel of work. Yet all the while, he was just marking time, doing absolutely nothing. The critters that was working. They built a fine house, the likes of which nobody in these parts had ever seen. Why, if the truth be known, it was a splendid house. Plenty of upstairs rooms, plenty of downstairs rooms, a whole heap of chimneys, fireplaces, and all sorts of other wonderful things. After the house was finished, each critter picked a room. Old Brer Rabbit picked one of the upstairs rooms and proceeded to furnish it. While all the other critters were busy finishing their rooms, Br'er Rabbit was slipping 3 things into his room: a shotgun, a big black cannon, and a big tin tub of water. When everything was all finished in the house, they cooked a big supper to celebrate. Then everyone took a seat in the parlor. Br'er Rabbit sat for a while, then he yawned, and he stretched, and excused himself for bed. The other creatures stayed on and laughed and talked and had a good time in their new parlor. While they were talking and laughing, Br'er Rabbit yelled from his room, "When a big feller like me wants to sit down, whereabouts do you think he ought to sit?" All the critters just laughed and said, "When a big feller like you can't sit in a chair, he better sit on the floor." "Watch out down there, because I'm fixing to sit right now," yelled Br'er Rabbit. He pulled the trigger of the shotgun. Ga-boom! Well, all the critters looked at one another and wondered what in the world was that. But everything was quiet then, and nobody said anything for a long time. After a while, the critters forgot the noise and started talking and laughing again. Then Br'er Rabbit stuck his head out the door again and said, "When a big feller like me wants to sneeze, whereabouts can he sneeze?" The other creatures turned and hollered up the stairs, "When a big fella like you can't hold a sneeze, he can sneeze where he please." "Watch out down there, because I'm going to sneeze right here," said Br'er Rabbit, and he lit the fuse on the cannon. Kaboom! Well, the sound of the cannon knocked the critters out of their chairs. The glass shook in the windows, the dishes rattled in the cupboard, and Br'er Rabbit hit the floor right on his bottom. "Lordsy be," said Br'er Bear. "I think Br'er Rabbit has a powerful bad cold. I think I'm going to step outside for a breath of fresh air." All the critters settled down again and were talking amongst themselves when Br'er Rabbit yelled out another time, "When a big fella like me wants to take a chew of tobacco, whereabouts is he supposed to spit?" The other critters hollered back to Br'er Rabbit, mad as they could be, "If you be a big man or a little man, spit where you please." "Look out down there," yelled Br'er Rabbit. "I'm fixing to spit." About that time, he turned over the tub of water and it came rolling down the steps. Splash! Well, every one of the critters heard it coming at the same time. They all took off in different directions. Some jumped out the windows, some bolted through the doors. Everyone went in a different direction, but they all cleared out of that house. Old Br'er Rabbit locked the doors, closed the windows, went to bed, and slept like he owned the world. Only because he did. And there you have it, the story of Br'er Rabbit. What is it? How's it go? Br'er Rabbit builds a home. Br'er Rabbit builds a home. There you go. That's the story. So, I've gone over my time by a little bit. So I'm just going to have to chalk it up and quit. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9 signing out. Don't forget, sleep right, sleep tight, and don't let the bed bugs bite. Do your thing while I leave here and go on upstairs and continue to sing, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to let my voice continue to ring while you sleep it all off. But if those bed bugs bite you, you make sure, don't bite them back. Just hit them with a shoe till they turn black and blue. That's what you do. Peace out now. I will see y'all tomorrow. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9 signing off.